Okay, let's call this meeting to order. City of North Kansas City, Missouri, regular council meeting, January 21, 2020. Could we have a moment of silence? Brian?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, comments from the public.
Number 4, sir.
Oh, approval of the agenda. I'm going to pull item number 15 because we're short 2 of our council members, and I'd like to have everybody present to be able to vote on that one. So, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now, comments from the public.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Valerie Swearingen, 3008 Howell. I just have a couple of things I wanted to comment on while I'm here. First, I spent 8 hours at the high school today volunteering in the library. They're opening in a couple of weeks. It looks fantastic. March 7th is going to be the open house. Time, I think, is still to be determined, but they're going to have all the community and everybody come see it, and it looks fantastic. But that's not why I came officially. Officially, I wanted to comment on number 16, which is the Howell Street project that you guys are working on. I live on Howell. It's working. I love it. Thank you for putting that in as a test. I would like to request option C. I think it would be the best look for elevating our city to the status we want, which is the curb, the official concrete curbs instead of the delineators or the little plastic curb bumps that make me think of this yellow cord on the floor. I just think C would be the best. And then one other item I wanted to comment on quickly while I was here, the charitable grants. I know you guys are just doing kind of a formal approval today, but since I was at the library today, I saw the Library Media Center applied for a 1,000 grant and got 0, but there was like the last group on the chart, I think it was number 29, asked for $7,000 and it's getting $8,000. So I just thought maybe if that was a typo or if the library could get that instead of that group getting extra money. That's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 11.
Darren Vandover, General Manager, Harrah's, North Kansas City.
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, City Administrator. My name is Darren Vandover. I'm General Manager of Harrah's. I apologize, I've been there for 2.5 years. I should have been here sooner. Hello. Before I get to why I'm here, I'd like to talk about where the business stands today. And as many of you know, we just celebrated our 25th year here in September. We've put in over $450 million into that facility, and specifically in the last 2 years, put in about $11 million. We have about 950 employees. From a company aspect, as I think it's agenda number 22, we have $100,000 for the charity thing, for the city, which we work with you guys. In 2019, we also give $20,000 grant to the YMCA for the new American Welcome Center, which just opened recently. And then every month, we have our employees dress in jeans. They pay for it. We give them really horrible uniforms, so they pay money, $3, to wear jeans every week. And with that, we generate a couple $1,000s every month for different charities in town. And this morning, we actually gave checks to Hillcrest and to Rosebrooks, a couple $1,000s each for those organizations. From a business standpoint, in 2016, the 4 boats in Missouri generated $599 million in revenue. Here we are 4 years later for the calendar year 2019, and they generated only $601 million, a $2 million increase. During that time, though, we went from 170 million in revenue to 177 million in revenue. So where we increased, they did lose share, the other boats. We did this through smart business practice, investing 11 million in the facility, and through marketing programs. Our relationship with the Kansas City Royals has helped. Our parent company, Caesars, now has a relationship with the NFL. We're a proud sponsor of the NFL. And this year, for the first year, we are proud sponsors of the Kansas City Chiefs. Or better said, proud sponsors of the AFC champions, Kansas City Chiefs. And hopefully, proud sponsors of the AFC or the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. We also put in this little thing called Gordon Ramsay steak in November. So with that, the reason I am here, it brings me here, is we want to make a subtle change to our name where we'll be known as Harrah's Kansas City. Many of the reasons with the group that was here before, where is North Kansas City? People that don't know the area, they could be up by the airport. And this really helps with our worldwide customer base and puts us next to a larger city, even though we all know we're next to a larger city. And again, this would be a subtle name change. So that big billboard you see of Gordon, the only thing it changes about it is one word disappears. On social media, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, we have lost our MySpace page, so I'm sorry we don't have that anymore. But that will also be Kansas City. It'll help us recruit. It'll help us bring in more business. And with more business, it'll bring in more tax revenue for the city of North Kansas City. Nothing changes in our relationship. Still going to be given the $100,000. You need help with murals, call me up. Need help with schools, donations for libraries, call me up. But we are here. We're part of the community, and that's what we like to be. We just want to make sure that we make it as profitable for the both of us. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Are you finished with your latest facelift? I seen that a couple of weeks ago.
We are busy remodeling the second floor. It hasn't gotten a remodel. That will be actually ahead of schedule. It's supposed to be done about mid-April. Now it's going to be done hopefully by March 15th, if not earlier. So we're going through a lot. We remodeled all the bathrooms. That cost about $1 million. We got new escalators, which you wouldn't think are that expensive. That was $1 million. It adds up a little bit. But yes, we're trying to make it as nice as possible for those guests that come in and visit us.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Well, thanks. I'm sorry it took me 2.5 years to get here. So I'll try to get here quicker than that next time. So before I do leave, I do want to thank you for your help with the VLT stuff. I know last week you passed something to help with the fight with the cities that have boats. And I want to thank the mayor and the city administrator. Eric was down there actually last year. He was testifying on our behalf. It is a big deal. I came from Illinois. I was there for 10 years. I saw what those did to the business there. So it is essential that we fight this. So thank you very much for that. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Number 12.
Public hearing, Northgate Tax Increment Financing Plan.
Guess we just open the public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
All right, sir. So we'll begin with the staff report and then go on to public comments. So I'd like to call on the Assistant City Administrator, Kim Nakahoto.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to kind of give a brief project overview of the Northgate Village, kind of from its inception to where we are now, and a couple of steps as we move forward. So why we are doing this is it's actually required as part of a TIF plan that a public hearing is conducted every 5 years. So this is the state statute that kind of mandates that. We have advertised this public hearing for the last 4 weeks, as is required in the Kansas City Star. So I'd like to kind of go back in time a little bit. The Northgate Village was actually identified as a prime spot for redevelopment in 1996 as the city was taking on its comprehensive master plan. In 1996, the city authorized the formation of the North Kansas City Tax Increment Financing Commission to help finance this project. The city went out for bids for the RFP in 1997, but negotiations did break down with the first group that was selected. The picture that's up on the screen right now is actually a screenshot of what Northgate Village used to look like in the 1990s. The city had issued a second RFP in 1999, and selected the development team of Hunt Midwest Enterprises and Rainin Companies. Their proposal featured a mixed-use redevelopment that included single-family homes, townhomes, a retail site, senior apartments, and multiple styles of apartment livings. Hunt Midwest was responsible for the single-family and commercial development, and Rainin was responsible for the apartments. In February of 2000, let me talk a little bit about what Northgate Village was. Northgate Village was 666 single-story garden-style apartments. I've never understood why they didn't build one more or one less. It consisted of 56 acres, and it was built in phases from 1947 to 1951, and for the first 30 years, it was very functional. It actually housed a quarter of North Kansas City's residential population, which is kind of unbelievable. As time continued on, it did begin aging and it did begin deteriorating. It was identified as part of the planning process because it was adjacent to very stable neighborhoods. It was adjacent to Mackin Park, which was seen as a very good commodity in North Kansas City, and it was close to downtown North Kansas, it was close to downtown Kansas City. As it aged, it kind of naturally began becoming home to, it kind of served as a de facto senior plus community as well as a low-income housing community. Here are a few pictures of what Northgate Village used to look like. I know a lot of people don't remember perhaps what it used to look like, but this is what it looked like as the city began to contemplate what the future of Northgate could be. The city actually had a blight designation for this particular area. It was part of the redevelopment package. So in 1999, the Northgate TIF plan the public hearing was held to begin the financing for this particular development. As part of this development, the city approved the Northgate TIF plan and as well signed the master development agreement with Hunt Midwest and Rainin. As part of this agreement, the city assumed the financial responsibility of property acquisition, relocation, and demolition, and that was at that time estimated to be $19 million. Given that the city took on the responsibility of this development activity, it was agreed upon that the city would capture those TIF, the tax increment financing, and that would come back to the city to reimburse this initial cost for the development. As part of this, the TIF plan was actually fractured into 15 different project areas, and the reason why that was fractured was it allowed the city to maximize the tax revenue. So just to kind of quickly touch on what is allowed with TIF, TIF is 23 years of tax abatement, but you get 10 years to implement it. So you get a 33-year window to actually make this project happen. So although it was initiated in 2000, it gave us 33 years to activate those TIF parcels and then to allow those revenues to flow back to the city. Again, in 2000, the city did approve the TIF plan and the master development agreement. During that time, the city actually had to amend the TIF plan, the master development agreement twice due to the city's inability to take over that land due to litigation. In 2002, the city did secure the property and demolition began. It was a phased demolition. The city was charged with actually relocating all of the residents that were in that area, and we did that over a several-year period. In 2003, the project was in full swing. The Northgate Village PUD, which is a planned urban development, was adopted. Phase 1 was platted, Ruby Tuesdays was approved, the CCRs, which is what governs what is allowable for development within the Northgate Village, there was 2 of them, there was a residential one and a commercial one, and the demolition and infrastructure work was well underway. So, as I was saying, the project really did move ahead very efficiently from 2004 to 2007. 8 of the 15 TIF parcels had been activated, the land sales had been transacted, and construction was underway. As most of us understand, in 2008, the bottom did drop out of the housing economy and Northgate was severely impacted. In 2009, again, that 10-year window of activation, we had come to that backstop date and the city had to activate the remaining 7 parcels, even though there was no construction being done on those particular areas. It was either activate it or lose the opportunity to capture those tax revenues for the next 23 years. So this is a map that kind of shows how those project areas were activated. The numbers that are on the left-hand column is when they were activated, and the numbers in the right-hand column is when they would return to the tax rolls at full rate. In 2010, the city had its first public hearing. On that slide, that is actually an aerial from 2010. That is what the development looked like at that time. We had 1 retail pad development, and that was the Ruby Tuesday. It's actually the only commercial development in that area, and it's the only one that we got the EATS, which is the sales tax revenue, to reimburse the TIF plan. In 2010, the city had extended the first extension of the master development agreement. Again, it was a very different economic time. We were headlong into the Great Recession, so we understood where the developers were at that time and granted a time extension. The table that's below, that's where they were in 2010 on completion rates, and it was the 6th year of active TIF activation. In 2011, the city made a 3rd amendment to the master development agreement, and it actually allowed a grocery store to go into that commercial land in Northgate Village. Previous to that was not allowed. It allowed a liquor store, again, that was previously not allowed, and it allowed a medical office building. What the thought process was they were trying to get that commercial area developed because the TIF time clock had been started. In 2012-13, the first TIF plan amendment was completed, and the 4th amendment to allow for Gardens 3. This added 73 units to that development that was previously not encountered. The Rainin Company had very good success with the senior housing, and since there was not a lot of other housing that was being developed at that time, the city allowed them to go ahead and extend Gardens 3 and readjust the future projections for that particular area. When we brought forward the TIF plan amendment in December, those were the calculations that we amended, were the ones that were projected in 2012. In 2014, a second extension to the master development agreement was agreed upon, extending the date for completion of the project to 2018. In 2015, the 5th amendment to the master development agreement had occurred, and what it did again was that, once again, those senior living apartments were doing very well, so they amended it to allow for 60 more senior living apartments. It also redistributed that entire area. Originally where the Gardens 4 was supposed to be for commercial property, but the city saw the need for more. The things that were working, and the things that were working were senior housing. So they removed that area from commercial and made that into residential. A lot of actions were done at that particular area. In 2018, the master development expired. 2019, we executed termination agreements for both the Hunt Midwest and Rainin. This allowed the city to take over development for the undeveloped areas, as well as part of the wind-up agreement, HUD Midwest agreed to complete the 30 remaining row homes and adjacent pocket parks. And the city council entered into a development agreement with Rainin for the development of the missing 24 units that were planned but never constructed in City View on the parcel located at 27th and Buchanan, known as Lot 2B. That brings us up to today, which is our TIF public hearing. And this is where the status of this project currently is. We do own the areas that are in yellow. We have an active RFP out for what we call the super block, which is the residential block. Once that comes forward and once that gets a little bit more into the pipeline, we'll be issuing an RFP for the commercial property. And again, this was part of the TIF plan amendment that was brought forward for adoption in December. This is the financial status of where Northgate Village is currently. The last two rows on the right side, the actual, those are part of the comprehensive annual financial report. The project costs right now are a little bit north of $29 million, and right now we have collected a little bit north of $9 million in pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, and the EATs. Again, with Ruby Tuesdays being closed, and as you saw in the 2019 TIF amendment, we're not projecting any more TIFs. If they do come about as we start to develop those commercial properties, we'll be bringing that forward for another TIF plan amendment. Just to kind of touch base on where we are and several of the things. Right now, staff is working on updating the commercial covenants, restrictions, and easements for the commercial properties. Those are some of the things. We are really trying to streamline and simplify some of the restrictions that are on that commercial property within Northgate Village. We're patterning it heavily off of 1 North to make it simpler and open it up to what would the private sector feel can be done on those particular pieces of land. As mentioned before, we're currently in an RFP process to develop the super block, and we look forward to selecting someone and working through that process along with the City Council's permission to move forward on that. And then as well to get the commercial development underway. A couple of things that we're anticipating in the future. We do anticipate a third TIF plan amendment in 2021. Once those development agreements are executed, we'll have a good understanding of what will be developed in that space and what is the TIF revenues that we can expect from those particular areas. We expect the City View Apartments Lot 2B to be completed also in 2021. We expect completion of the row homes from Hunt Midwest in 2022. And we expect the completion of the super block and commercial property somewhere between 2023 and 2024. We would anticipate another public meeting, TIF public hearing, just like we're having today in 2025. Overall, the Northgate Village redevelopment project has achieved several of its large big picture goals. One of the biggest things was to replace a deteriorating apartment complex that had multiple health and safety issues with a new mixed-use neighborhood. I'm just going to kind of scroll through a few of these photos here just to kind of have everybody remember of how dynamically this neighborhood has changed thanks to this project. Through the development of this project, another one of the large goals that the city had hoped to accomplish was to significantly improve its tax base, thus assisting not only the city, but other taxing jurisdictions, namely the school district. That was one of the goals that the city took on this project to do. Once this TIF plan is fully retired in 2032, we do anticipate significant property tax growth in this particular area of North Kansas City. I would like to note, however, that due to significant development delays associated with Northgate Village, the overall goal of fully refunding the city's financial investment through this project using TIF proceeds may not be realized. We will not know until we enter into these development agreements and get a better assessment of what completion looks like and what the tax rate would be before we could bring forward with that third TIF plan amendment a better understanding of what the city can recover thanks to this project. The City Council has directed staff to proceed in completing this particular project and to develop the remaining city-owned parcels. Again, this is just a couple of the photos of this particular area. With that, I'd be happy to answer any of the questions you may have.
You mentioned lightening the restrictions on the commercial space. Do you have any details on that at this point, or like what we would, is it going to be kind of open reign within our zoning code, or like what are we looking at?
One of the things that we'd like to do is actually make the CCRs, that covenants restrictions, match our new zoning ordinance. Right now, they do not. There are a couple of restrictions that we're looking to remove. Height is one of them. Right now, you wouldn't be able to put a 2 or 3-story building into that commercial area, meaning you couldn't do a mixed-use development of maybe office space on top and retail on the bottom. We have heard the desire of that, so that would be one of the things we're looking to loosen.
And if I may add, per council indication, the RFP will likely allow for proposing any kind of use, not just necessarily commercial, given that it hasn't developed that way over the last 20 years.
Oh, if you got something else.
Just one of you also said we're not projecting anything further on the Ruby Tuesdays at all. Is that, so this 33 million number doesn't include anything else from that Ruby Tuesday parcel, just kind of assuming it sits?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. What we're hoping is that that land would transact within the next year in between the TIF plan amendments. Should another operator come in, we would happily add those EATs, those economic activity taxes back into those projections. But for right now, when we brought forward that amendment in 19, we really wanted to be as conservative as possible.
I was going to ask you on the RFP on the super block. So that the submittal process is closed, right? And so now it's just, any idea when we're going to get to see the list of submittals?
We are currently in the process of interviewing several proposers who responded to our request for proposals. We anticipate completing that by the end of the month, after which time we will have a discussion with council about what team we feel offers the best opportunity to develop that in the way that we'd like to see it developed.
Thank you.
I just have two things. One, thank you for the explanation about the MDA amendments, specifically related to the grocery store use, because I'd heard that over the years since I've lived there, that a grocery store wasn't allowed, and somehow I had it, so it was associated with Save-A-Lot, but it sounds like it was an MDA agreement.
It was an MDA. When they amended it, they allowed for a full-service grocery store. They did not allow for what they considered a discount, and that was to not protect, but to be mindful of the
duplicate,
city's investment in the Save-A-Lot.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that. And then secondly, I thought you did a great job on this. It was very great. I mean, it's the best one I think I've seen, and I appreciate your history and overview of it, so thank you for that.
Good. One more. So do we have any idea what the projected city sale, or the city property tax would be at the conclusion of the TIF? Like how much we would collect?
I don't have those numbers. It's actually one of the reasons why we didn't include it in the TIF plan amendment, because there's a couple of large unknowns, meaning what does that super block look like? How dense is it and what is it valued at? As well as, will the commercial property stay commercial? Eric kind of alluded to that. Will it go to residential? And what that would mean is it'd be evaluated at a much different rate. So we really tried to be very careful about the numbers that we're putting into the public realm.
Thank you.
Public comments? Well, hearing none. Motion to accept the report and close the public hearing.
Second?
All in
I'll
favor?
make a motion. I'll make a
Oh,
motion.
I thought you-
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, 13.
Final plat, Northgate Village Residential Third Plat, Bill number 7484, ordinance number 9281.
Eric.
I'd like to call on the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This plat concerns the property that's just at the southeast corner of Swift and 32nd Avenue. With the vacation of the right-of-way there at Swift, the council approved last fall, the developer would like to adjust the layout of the townhomes that are planned for that corner, and that requires two actions that are before you: the approval of this final plat and also the PUD amendment. That's the next item. This plat dedicates new utility easements, has a new access easement for the existing sidewalk that then would be inside the new parcel, and provides a monument sign easement to the Northgate Village Homeowners Association. At its January 9th meeting, the Planning Commission found the proposed final plat to be in conformance with the approved preliminary plat and recommended approval to you on a unanimous vote. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and we do have a representative of Hunt Midwest here also.
Any questions?
First reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance approving the final plat of Northgate Village Residential, third plat in the city of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that bill number 7484 be placed on second and final reading, passes ordinance number 9281.
Second.
Call roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance approving the final plat of Northgate Village Residential, third plat in the city of North Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay.
We're easy on you tonight.
Okay, 14.
Planned Unit Development Amendment for Northgate Village, Bill number 7485, ordinance number 9282.
Eric?
Thanks, sir. I'll call on Ms. Copeland.
So the development of Northgate Village is governed by a planned unit development that has been approved and further amended over time by ordinance. The ordinance that's before you now concerns the portion of that PUD concerning the townhomes that are adjacent to that intersection at 32nd and Swift. The Planning Commission held the public hearing that's required for amending the PUD at their last meeting and then recommended approval to you on a unanimous vote. Again, this would just change the layout of those townhomes from a 6-unit grouping to 2 3-unit groupings, more similar to the groups of 4 that we have in the rest of the development. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, and I'm sure that John Burkle would be happy to come back up again.
Anybody got any questions?
First reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance amending the Northgate Village Planned Unit Development District, PUD, and associated sketch plan, subject to the conditions incorporated herein.
I move that bill number 7485 be placed on second and final reading, passes ordinance number 9282.
Second.
Call roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance amending the Northgate Village Planned Unit Development District, PUD, and associated sketch plan, subject to the conditions incorporated herein.
Okay, number 16. Thank you, sir. Eric?
Howell Street traffic calming, next steps.
Eric?
Thanks, sir. I'll call on Ms. Copeland.
So in the summer of 2019, council directed us to start a pilot project with some bump outs installed on Howell Street to see if these could address perpetual speeding complaints that the city had received. And I want to make a correction regarding something that was in the staff report in the packet. The speed limit on this section of Howell is 20 miles an hour, not 25. We were very happy to see that it does appear that these have helped. One, in that the neighborhood has been happy with the installation of these bump outs, but also when the police department conducted another speed study, we did find that there were more people obeying the speed limit, more people who were speeding but not as much, and the people who were going really fast, there were just fewer of them. So while we still have the same average speed of 22 miles an hour on this section of roadway, it appears that there is slightly less speeding than there was before. That's the chart that's on page 2 describes that. So we were asked to put together 3 options for making the pilot project more permanent. Of course, you could direct us to leave the project as it is and let the delineators continue to do the work. But we generally thought that there were 3 options for making incremental improvements to the pilot project. Option A would be to do some kind of beautification of the existing bump outs. We could install some of the oversized planters with landscaping in them there. We could create some asphalt art with paint or thermoplastic and just try to make these areas look prettier. So that's option A. Option B would be to install some sort of modular curb there. We would probably keep at least some of the delineators in place, but we could install either curb stops, or there's a product called Curb Rail that is another modular product that we could install here to make kind of the improvements a little bit more permanent in this area. We could do a little combination of A and B if you wanted us to install curb stops and planters. There's some, we could do some additional tweaking in these options there. But option C is to install bump out islands and to really make this permanent, to saw cut out the existing pavement, to put in curb, the landscape these areas. We tried to provide you with some cost estimates for these three options. Option C is a little bit more complicated in what that cost estimate might be, so we just have a range here. We would probably need to contact our city engineer for some assistance into, particularly because we don't want to create a stormwater issue. But we think there are several ways that we could create permanent bump outs here to make them more permanent. So these are options A, B, and C. I will pause here before getting into the two crosswalk questions to see if you have any questions or feedback about these three options.
A question on the speed secondary study. Where was that speed set up at? Do we know?
It was at 27th and Howell, same place
27th.
the first one was.
Okay, and was this before or after the mid post kept disappearing?
After.
After,
The
so it was
second one,
gone.
The middle of December is when we conducted the most recent study.
And by then, the buses had run over it enough times where it was gone?
I believe so.
Okay. Because I know that tended to make a pretty big difference for how narrow the road fell, and people were even stopping at those crosswalks. They weren't quite sure how to navigate, so I didn't know if that was messing with the data at all. Do we have any idea what the difference in speed was when those posts were up?
No, we didn't conduct a speed study immediately after those went in, so we don't.
Gotcha. Would those be part of the final design at all?
At this point, no, we're not planning to reinstall those.
Okay.
Now, that's something that we could always revisit at some point in the future if you were interested in that.
I would agree, when you watched that, it felt like it was pretty effective. 'Cause they would hedge on the outside, they come a little bit in the middle, and then you see the middle pole, then you really got to straighten it out and actually make an effort to stay in your lane and go straight there. So I agree, that seemed like pretty.
Our thought was that those probably make the biggest difference in off-peak hours. When you have a lot of traffic, that probably, the oncoming traffic helps to do that. But in off-peak hours, that probably does keep speeds down.
If you're the only car on the road, it doesn't, like, the bump outs don't make it feel that much narrower if there's not another car. I think it's exactly right. So I was just curious if that had impacted the traffic study.
Just to continue there, I would prefer probably option C to give it a more permanent look. Looks like it created a little bit more space if you do some different landscaping in there as well.
I personally like option C. However, I would sure like to see a really good engineering firm that knows what they're doing to tell us how to do it. Because I know it can be done, but you got to have somebody that understands traffic.
We would engage our on-call consulting engineer, which right now is Wilson and Associates.
Well, there's no doubt what we have done works, and it did work better with that center stick, but I don't think they'll ever survive. Everybody I seen really had to slow down for those. But whatever we did was good, and if we can make it better, I'm all for it. So that is so vital area. So many people cross it to go to the park, and kids. Well, I care about the adults too, but I care more about the kids. But I think we can improve it. Let's go for it.
Well, that crossing down there by the school, that needs to be completely redone.
Well, we actually do have two additional questions about the crosswalks, but if I could ask for some additional clarification, We have 2 bump outs on the east side of Howell, adjacent to the park, where we installed bike racks for bike parking. Would you want us to leave those there for bike parking or saw cut those out also?
Can they be there with poured curbs? Is that a thing?
I don't know why. I mean,
Because, I mean, I've seen the bike master plan discusses having a bike lane that runs on the park side of Howell. So having them there seems logical if we're looking down the road. Now, if we're pouring curb all the way around, then that might be a little onerous to get your bike into them. But I definitely lean toward option C, but if we can keep the bike racks in a sensible way, sure.
Yes, I agree with that.
okay.
I'm in favor of
Dude.
option C, and I like your crosswalks, and I think we should ask the engineering firm about a center post, so that in the future, if that's needed, we have the option to do that. We have a plan for that.
You just want to go with consensus here or get a motion?
Yes, just consensus now, and then we'd come back to you
Okay.
with a budget amendment and some fairly refined cost estimate. So, yeah, if there's any more discussion on that, I think we're hearing you prefer option C. We're hearing retain bike racks if at all possible. And we're hearing that you like the center post. If we can find a way to,
Or at least have a plan for the future
Right.
in case we need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
any other consensus on that before we move on to crosswalks?
Okay, then,
One bit of information is that the road district has decided that once this is all done, we plan to go in there and roto-mill the whole thing curb to curb. You know, we didn't do the parking the last time we did it, but this time we want to do the curb to curb all the way through, so make it look nice. But we don't want to do it until we decide what we're going to do with these bump outs.
but then there are 2 crosswalks locations, one at 27th Avenue. This was a crosswalk that was removed when we put the pilot project in because there was no ADA ramp on the east side. So it's not accessible and not considered to be safe. We could, we've heard interest in reinstalling that crosswalk. We would estimate that that cost would be approximately $5,500 to put in the necessary curb ramp and install a short section of sidewalk to connect the curb ramp on the east side to the existing sidewalk there by Mackin Park and then put in the new markings. We also, the police department has raised the question about a crosswalk at 24th Avenue and Howell and Iron. This would direct people between the parking lot at 24th and Iron and the main entrance into the football field and the field house and just the whole high school complex there. There's not an existing crosswalk, and with more people walking in this area, we think that there's a real need for one. And so estimate the cost of that at approximately $6,000. So I wanted to your direction on those 2 locations.
I'd be a fan of reinstalling 27th. I was initially, had made comments that called it the sidewalk to nowhere, and mostly because that now I'm direction disoriented, that east side did not have the curb cut or the connection. But I do think in conjunction with the bump outs, that would be good to probably have that installed there again.
24th, absolutely. Coming off that parking lot, headed over to the stadium, just makes a lot of sense to get that put in. And then on the 27th one, are we talking about, so there's a crosswalk drawn on the pavement that's on the north side that connects to nothing on the park side? Is that where we're talking
Yes.
to reinstall? Okay. The sidewalk on the west side stops right after you get across the street if you're headed down 27th. There's nothing beyond that. It kind of, you can go north, but you can't keep going down 27th. Is that privately owned after the sidewalk's ending there, or?
I don't believe so.
Okay, is there any discussion of having more sidewalk down that direction? Because then if you cross, you then have to go across 27th to keep going anywhere.
We hadn't discussed it in the past.
Because if we're gonna redo and have a crosswalk that goes across, and then you can't go down 27th on it, could we look at going on the south side of that intersection, so?
you get into Clark Ferguson right there.
Right,
That's
so-
not a good place to have a crosswalk.
Because it does have the ramp down, it's just not an actual crossing. But that one does continue down 27th. So it's kind of an odd mix where one, you cross over and can't keep going unless you cross 27th. So, maybe we take a kind of a look at that intersection. It's a little different. Yeah, I don't know, anybody else have a thought on it? I've got it pulled up here.
We can examine that in the future, but I guess in the short term, do you,
We walk down 27th all the time.
Oh, I mean, for the intention of, I mean, I'm fine looking at 27th, but, like, I don't think that's the intent of where people usually walk.
Right. So
But I
this-
think we can look at the sidewalk on 27th and see if maybe that needs to be continued.
You see what I'm saying? Like you cross
I mean,
over.
I would suggest those are really two different things for our purposes, because the south side of that intersection is not a great place for a crosswalk, because on the east side, you would be entering into the Clark Ferguson intersection. So we could move forward with the crosswalk and then determine later whether or not we should extend the sidewalk on 27.
so I think we're hearing consensus to move forward on crosswalks, on reinstalling the crosswalk at 27th and installing a new crosswalk at 24th, which just, again, we just want to make clear you understand that would also involve constructing a little bit of sidewalk at the very bottom of the median there. So,
One on 24th. So that light, that would be, where exactly? Was it on the map here? It said there has to be a light installed as part of 24th.
oh, it's a street light. Yes, it's dark.
Just right in the middle, like around
Yes.
the island? Okay.
Yeah, that would be the idea.
And is there lights on either end of that?
It's really not very well lit right there.
Yeah, because I've noticed that on 23rd before, where sometimes the road seems well lit, but when they're stepping out from the dark into the street, it's just, you don't have much time to really, I don't know why. Going into public safety yet here, but no, you usually don't have time to, it's harder to react to that when they're just stepping right out into the light. So if we get some light on the edges maybe, or at least look into that. The one light with an LED actually may be bright enough to catch all that, but
Oh, we start with one.
yeah, it's a good start.
So you got everything you need?
I think so, unless, yeah, I think that gives us consensus we need. We'll follow up with you, but thank you.
17.
Show me courts agreement and city code amendment, bill number 7480, ordinance number 9277.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on the Assistant City Administrator, Kim Nakahota.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I'd actually like to start off by introducing our municipal court administrator, Rochelle Perry. I'm not sure if anybody has ever met her before, but she is here tonight to answer any technical questions you may have with this item. The North Kansas City Municipal Court is a division of the statewide court system, which is controlled by the Missouri Supreme Court. Courts must implement rules that are ordered by the Supreme Court or its designees. In 2018, the Missouri Court Automation Committee and the Change Control Subcommittee adopted and designated the Show Me Court system as the mandatory statewide court management system. This system integrates with CaseNet, which some may be familiar with, allowing users to find pending cases all in one location regardless of jurisdiction or court division. Users can actually pay for violations through the Show Me Court online portal. Right now, the North Kansas City Municipal Court is scheduled to go live with the Show Me Court system on April 1st, 2020. The municipal court staff will attend training on this new system from February 4th to February 6th. A little bit about the system. In order to fund this new state-mandated system, the Missouri Office of State Courts Administrators is requiring that all municipal divisions, which is our municipal court, to impose a surcharge of $7 on all cases in which court costs are applied. Included in your memo was a table that showed the breakdown of all the fees associated with municipal court tickets. Those fees are in addition to the fines associated with violations, and they are only applied when the defendant pleads guilty or is found guilty for ordinance violations. which means on October 1st, or on April 1st, the fees will go from $31.50 per violation to $38.50 per violation, including the fine. There are several issues that we've identified as part of this state mandatory conversion to show me courts, and I just thought we would go over just a few of those so that you guys are aware of some of the things that will be facing our municipal court over the next couple of years. This conversion will require us to run 2 different systems. Currently, right now, we utilize the municipal court module of the city's accounting software, which is the Encode system. This is our internal case management system, which means citations that are issued before April 1st, before our go-live date with the new state mandatory system, are entered into our Encode system. After April 1st, they'll be inputted into the Show Me Court system. Again, due to this transition, it means that our staff will have to maintain 2 separate databases and 2 different payment portals. We will have to maintain both of these systems until the old documents are cleared out of the city's Encode system. And right now, there are 7,786 open cases in that Encode system. We do not have a clear out date for that. It could be, in all honesty, it could be up to 10 years for us to clear out all of the cases in the Encode system, and then we would have 100% turnover to the new Show Me Court system. There are unknown future costs. That $7 fee that's applied to the court fines after April 1st goes to pay for the new Show Me Court system, but it does not go to pay for the Encode system that we have to maintain as part of this conversion. Right now, we are investigating what startup costs are going to be required for us to transition into the new system. Again, we're hoping to have a lot more information after the staff goes through the training in February 4th through 6th. To have a better understanding of any hidden fees or integration costs that might be coming up as part of this integration into the new Show Me Court system. Just to kind of give you guys some understanding of how many items our municipal court processes. In 2019, we processed 4,403 violations. So just to kind of show you how many violations municipal court processes on an annual basis. Right now, there is a couple of integration questions that we are asking to see if our current e-ticketing process, Brazos, which is what our officers use, can automatically get uploaded to the Show Me Court system. Right now, it doesn't sound like that's a possibility, but again, our staff is still trying to learn all of the new things that come along with the Show Me Court system. We do anticipate, should there be any fees or items that need to come forward for a budget amendment, we would do that later on in the year. What is before the City Council today is an agreement that the city needs to sign with the state authority to begin transitioning to the Show Me Court system. It's the MOU that's attached to your memo, as well as a city code amendment, which would allow us to apply the $7 fee for the Show Me Court system. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, we don't have much choice, do we?
No.
So, I have one. Oh, go ahead.
Just a couple questions. So, so it's basically the 7,786, that's basically maybe like a year and a half or a year and a third or whatever of cases. They could go years back.
They currently include legacy cases, and some of those cases could be several years old, meaning that it could be somebody who was cited 5-10 years ago. We're still looking for that person. There could be an active warrant out for them. There is a time period that after a set amount of time, we have to retire that case.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to ask, is that at some point, is there sort of a law of diminishing returns where maybe we get that down to 2,000 or 3,000? Does it make sense to look at the possibility of closing those? I don't want to put people off the hook if they're responsible for things, but, it might be a cost benefit, not having to maintain both of those systems.
That would be a decision of the judge. That would be, the judge is who directs staff to vacate a particular
Okay.
citation.
Okay.
So that would be something that Rochelle and her team would work with the judge on. But some items he may want to keep on due to whatever the judge deems he may want to roll for a year or two.
Okay, and would there be a possibility that at some point you could take the cases and maybe extract them from Encode and import them into the new software, or is that not that's not a possibility at all?
At this time, it's not. We are working with Encode to see if there is some kind of mass importing tool that they could develop to help with that. That would be a wonderful thing for our staff, just to do a mass upload from our legacy system into the new system. Right now, Encode doesn't have that tool. We're hoping that perhaps other jurisdictions like us are transitioning, that there may be a market that they would develop that tool.
Okay, thank you.
That was my question.
Okay, and I'm fine with the amendment, by the way. Not, like the mayor says, we don't really have a choice, but.
Got a motion?
First reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance, A, amending Article 2, Court Costs of Chapter 2.36 Municipal Court of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, by adding Section 2.36.295 thereto, establishing additional court costs for statewide court automation fund, and B, authorizing and directing the city to enter into an agreement with the Missouri Office of State Courts Administrator for implementation of the Show Me Courts automation software.
I move that bill number 7480 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9277.
Second.
Call the roll?
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance, A, amending Article 2, Court Cost of Chapter 2.36 Municipal Court of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, by adding Section 2.36.295 thereto, establishing additional court costs for statewide court automation fund, and B, authorizing and directing the city to enter into an agreement with the Missouri Office of State Courts Administrator for implementation of the Show Me Courts automation software.
Number 18.
Winter sewer averaging option for residential customers, Bill number 7481, ordinance number 9278.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. In November, the city council considered a proposal to establish a residential sewer customer option to have sewer billing be based on the amount of water consumed in the winter months, typically called winter averaging, sewer winter averaging. We did go into that in some detail back in November, so I won't do it again unless you'd like me to. But now before you then, to make it official, is a relatively simple addition to the code that will provide for that winter sewer averaging option. So at this point, it's before you for your consideration.
Well, this is optional by the consumer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And could you refresh my memory? What's the advantage to this?
So if you do have certain activities in the summertime that you use, where you use a lot of water, but it doesn't go down the sewer, it doesn't go down the drain, such as irrigating your yard or filling a swimming pool, then it could be beneficial to folks like that.
And you still don't have an estimate of what the impact to the city might be from, because the last.
I really don't, but I don't
don't
think it would be a
anticipate it to be
significant,
large?
no. So much of our sewer is actually industrial usage, it
Yeah,
wouldn't be
that
affected
it
by that.
probably won't impact, okay.
First reading?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance amending Section 13.08.020 sewer charges of Chapter 13.08 Sewer Service System of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, by adding thereto a new paragraph, D, winter sewer averaging customer option.
I move that bill number 7481 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9278.
Second.
Call the roll?
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance amending Section 13.08.020 sewer charges of Chapter 13.08 Sewer Service System of the Code of the City of North Kansas City, Missouri, by adding thereto a new paragraph D, winter sewer averaging customer option.
Number 19.
2020 Community and Business Satisfaction Survey, Resolution Number 20.004.
Eric?
Thanks, sir. I'll call on Ms. Nakahota.
Good evening. The city last performed a citizen satisfaction survey in 2017. The city has worked with ETC for the last several citizen satisfaction surveys, and it's kind of a bonus that the leading national survey firm is right here in the Kansas City, Missouri region. They are located in Olathe, Kansas. In the 2020 budget, the City Council authorized both a citizen satisfaction survey and a new survey for North Kansas City, and that is to gauge the satisfaction levels of the business community. This will be a first for us, and right now we are working with ETC as well as the North Kansas City Business Council, Clay County EDC, Northland Regional Chamber of Commerce, and River North to develop questions for that business survey. ETC will develop random samplings of databases using survey information as well as census and the city's business license information to develop a random pool for both the citizen satisfaction survey and the business survey. Both surveys will be mailed to recipients accompanied by a letter from the city on the city's letterhead, and recipients can complete the survey either online or by mail. ETC will continue to follow up with both candidates from both separate pools. They are going to be looking for 200 community surveys and 100 completed business surveys. This will give them the statistical margin of error of plus or minus 6% and a 95% level of confidence on both these surveys. Furthermore, we're going to have both surveys cross-tabbed and geocoded to get an understanding of different areas and how they feel about different specific topics or questions. We look forward to coming forward to the City Council at its next work session to go over both those survey questions, both the citizen satisfaction as well as the business, before it goes out. The ETC has conducted business satisfaction surveys, so we're going to try to mirror several of those questions to get an understanding of how we are competing with other cities' business satisfaction surveys. The city of Shawnee actually did this in November of 2019. So it'll give us kind of a good understanding of not only our national benchmarking, but right here in the metro area. Per the city council's desire, both surveys will ask questions about the Armor Road Complete Street project. That way we'll get an understanding of what businesses and citizens feel about the project. And right now, kind of the proposed timeline would be that the surveys would be distributed in late February, early March, and then the report would be presented to the governing body in late April. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 20.
Kansas City Crime Commission Contract, Resolution Number 20-003.
Mr. Eric?
Thanks, sir. I'll call on the police chief, Kevin Freeman.
Thank you, sir. In front of you tonight, Mayor, members of the council, is the annual contract with the Kansas City Crime Commission that we enter into to provide them funding to help them with certain operational costs associated with the TIPS hotline. In return, they give us maintain the staff, the market, the hotline, and provide pertinent crime tip information to the city of North Kansas City for crimes in our jurisdiction. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Move to approve.
I was gonna ask, did we use that last year when I had the murder? Was that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't have the number, but my email string probably said we had upwards of 100 tips came in on that homicide.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 21.
Application for conditional use permit, natural resources processing and extraction, 1275 16th Avenue. Bill number 7479, ordinance number 9276.
Eric?
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Ms. Copeland.
Martin Marietta, Kansas City leases an area within the BNSF rail yard where they store clean stone aggregate that is coming into the rail yard and then is put onto trucks to go around the metro area. This activity is the subject of a conditional use permit that was originally approved in 2010 for a 5-year period and then renewed in 2015 for another 5-year period. So the current conditional use permit is set to expire at the end of February, and so the applicant would like to renew that for another 5-year term. We have this, generally speaking, the same conditions on this permit as we did in 2015, with the exception that in 2015 we considered the future possibility of adding screening to this area, which last year the Planning Commission discussed in further detail and decided was really impractical. So that's been removed. The applicant does have representatives here if you have any questions for them, but the Planning Commission held the required public hearing and recommended approval to you unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit for Martin Marietta, Kansas City LLC for the purpose of allowing the storage of clean stone aggregate in the General Industrial Zoning District M2, subject to the conditions incorporated herein.
I move that bill number 7479 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9276.
Second.
Call roll.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance authorizing a conditional use permit for Martin Marietta, Kansas City LLC for the purpose of allowing the storage of clean stone aggregate in the General Industrial Zoning District M2, subject to the conditions incorporated herein.
Number 22.
Allocations of Harrah's Charitable Fund contributions.
I have a comment, actually, if I may. Yes, discussion. So over the 6 years I've been here, I've had the opportunity to participate in the decision-making process for the Harrah's contributions, and I have been, generally very pleased with how that process has gone. So over that time, we've been able to basically provide $600,000, thanks to you guys, thank you, to various organizations. One of the things I have learned through that time period is that sometimes there are certain groups of organizations that get more or less funds depending on opinions of the council. And to Valerie Swearingen's point, about money to the school district, one of the things I've noticed is that traditionally on the council, what happens is parents who have kids in schools, will advocate for the schools to get money. People who don't have kids in schools will not advocate for this. There's plenty of money that comes from taxes and property tax and things like that for the school district, so you'll hear some of those arguments. So just as my 2 cents, as an outgoing council member, I would say it might be helpful for future councils to have some parameters, while not handicapping the council, or handcuffing, I should say, the council, to have some parameters that maybe at least this money goes into this category or this money in this category, or something along those lines that provides sort of a general template or, categorization, I guess, for future councils. So that's my 2 cents. What tends to happen, maybe on a council, you could literally have the whole council vote to give $100,000 to one organization if you so choose. So that's my 2 cents. I will let you all take that as it will, but that's generally what happens to educational funds with the Harrah's Fund, is there's no parameters that say at least this much has to go to education, so therefore very little generally goes to education.
Of course, I'd like everybody to understand that we had almost 3 times the request for money that we have money. And we had to choose among ourselves, and we argue about it a little bit, not argue, but discuss it over, is we do try to give most of the money to organizations that help other people in basic needs. And, you know, you asked about the library, you know, it's not going to feed anybody. I mean, it'd be nice to have and all that, don't get me wrong. And, you know, the school, when they asked for that library, they said they lost their library last year. They gave up their library. They refused to continue to work with the North Kansas City Library. So they ended that on their own. Yes, they did. I'm sorry if you don't believe that, but it happened. Oh, okay. Move to approve the.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 23.
Approving accounts due and payable by the city through January 17th, 2020. Bill number 7486, ordinance number 9283.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through January 17th, 2020.
I move the bill number 7486 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9283.
Second.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through January 17th, 2020.
Mr. Herrick?
Thanks, sir. Just would note that the upcoming city items of note report is in your packet, and there has been no change in status on the Armour Road Complete Street project since your last meeting. That concludes staff comments.
That all you got?
Yes, sir.
Right.
All right, so then I'll ask a question. How's the emergency snow route been going so far in terms of like getting the word out and not having to tell anybody?
The first one was a little bit rocky, but the second one went pretty well.
Okay, so we feel like we got
So I
it pretty
think
good.
that, yes, I think we've
Okay.
got it down now.
Perfect. There, we'll call that our Armor Road update for tonight. And I also want to congratulate David Taylor on his appointment to the Park Board. That's it.
All right, just a couple things. As of 5 o'clock today, ballots closed for the upcoming election. It looks like we have a race in every ward for the first time since I've moved in North Kansas City. So that's exciting. With the snow coming down, crews, as usual, do a great job getting the snow off the roads. One thing I would comment on, and I've heard from a couple neighbors, otherwise I would just kind of brush past it. We've seen some plow trucks just zipping through the neighborhood with the plows up through the alleyways and through the streets up in Northgate Village. So I'm not certain how fast they were going, but it was pretty quick. So if you could mention that to the guys or something like that.
Thank you, I sure will.
Thank you.
I just had a couple things tonight. One, I would tag on to the race in every ward. I think that's the first time since the hospital sale issue several years ago. So that's nice, I guess, that we've had that period, and nice that we have races in every ward. I think that's healthy. Thank you for the opportunity to divide up Harrah's fund money, and appreciate. I don't love the name change, but you know, it's, I'm a Northlander, so you know but I'm happy for the decision, and I think it's a good one for the city overall. So thank you for coming to talk to us about it. I'm happy that the Howell traffic calming is moving forward on a more permanent basis. I think that's been really great for our neighborhood. And the only 2 cents I'll say about the survey that I forgot to say earlier is the timing of that's a little challenging in that it's February and March. So if you ask about Armour Road, people will say, well, I don't see any bicycles on it. Well, of course you're not. It's February or March. So you'll get probably some of those comments, and we'll just have to consider that and keep that in mind. Because if you did it in August, you'd probably get a lot different, you know, some different responses. So that's my 2 cents tonight. Thank you.
I just have one, maybe Public Works probably, just, if you was in the CVS parking lot and then you went north on Clay and you get to 21st Street, there used to be a dentist there on that Right, you'd be the east side. There's a building anyway. And if you go there and drive, you can't see the traffic coming from the east because of their shrubbery. And I don't know if it's their shrubbery or ours, but it needs to be cut. I think. If you don't agree, that's fine, but I'd like if you check it out.
It's at 21st and Clay, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take,
On the east side.
okay.
That's the only side with shrubbery.
Well, coming up is February 2nd. That's Groundhog Day. More importantly, February 2nd is also Sunday of the Super Bowl. So everybody be rooting for the Chiefs. Been 50 years. I remember the last game when we played the Vikings. Very exciting.
I do too. I was in Vietnam watching it at 2 in the morning.
I just wish to welcome the chief on board. This is his first meeting, not his first meeting, but his first meeting as chief. So welcome, sir. Glad to have you on board. That's all I have.
Move to adjourn.
Nope.
We wish.
Second.
Number
Okay.
27.
All in favor? Can't take it back.
There was a motion in a second.
Gosh darn it. Consideration of a request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute, Section 610.0212.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, call a roll.
Councilmember DeLong?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Pearman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart? Councilmember Stefan?
Yes.
Councilmember Farr?
Yes, ma'am.
Still tired from the chief.